This is going to be my next installment in the ranking the album series that I've been doing to kind of wind down the year 2020. And I'm going to be tackling the Beach Boys. Now, by my count, there are 28 true Beach Boys studio albums, and that covers the period from 1962 all the way up through, I believe it was 2014, somewhere around there, when That's Why God Made the Radio, their most recent studio album, was released. And I know I'm going to make some people upset, or I know there's going to be a lot of disagreement about my list. I did a video of my top 10 Beach Boys albums about a month or two ago, and it might have been even longer than that. But since that time, I've kind of reordered my list. I'm not sure that this list is going to be consistent with how I ranked my top 10 a couple of months back, but this is, I really gave it a lot of thought, and this is my definitive list as of today, December 27th, 2020. Again, I'm not saying that, this is the worst albums to the best albums. This is just my own personal opinion. The Beach Boys albums that I prefer, the number one album is going to be the one I listen to the most. The bottom album is going to be the one that I listen to the least. It's real hard to rank all these because there are so many albums and there's so many really great Beach Boy albums to consider, but I did my best. So I'm going to start with number 28, and this should be no surprise to anybody. Summer in Paradise. I don't think there's any debate that Summer in Paradise is the worst Beach Boys album in their entire discography. John Stamos has a track on this album, Need I Say More? It's just totally overproduced. It's got the 90s, very, techno, cheesy. Not only are there cheesy vocals, there's cheesy synthesizers, cheesy drum machines. It's like the worst production ever. And really, I wish somebody would have had the presence of mind to say, we can't release this. This is just, we don't need the Beach Boys legacy to have to, account for this piece of garbage album. But that's going to be my very bottom pick. Number 27, I'm going to go with Stars and Stripes. Now, this was the Beach Boys collaborating with some modern or new country artists. I'm not a country fan. I mean, I don't hate country, but it's not something that I listen to a lot of. And for me, I don't appreciate what they were trying to do there. It's just not to my taste. I'm sure other people who maybe like country a little bit more might enjoy the album. For me, I don't. So I'm not going to make any more apologies about that. Number 26, I'm going to go with 1980s, Keeping the Summer Alive. This was at the point where the Beach Boys were fighting. They were barely talking to one another. They were literally like fist fighting on stage. That's how bad things had gotten. Bruce Johnson kind of took the reins of this album, and I know he did his best with what little he had. There's very little participation from Brian. Just in general, it's a pretty weak album. The songwriting's weak, the performances are weak, just not a standout album, and I don't hold it in very high regard. Number 25, I'm going to go with the MIU album. This album doesn't do anything for me. It really was supposed to be a Christmas album at one time, and when the record label rejected their Christmas album, they went and reworked some of the songs into just kind of, standard Beach Boys songs. And I don't know. I mean, it's not horrible. It's not as horrible as you've heard, but it's, nothing great either. And it's got Hey Little Tomboy, which is probably the creepiest song in the entire Beach Boys canon. So I'd just rather forget that this entire album existed. Again, the Beach Boys, there was fighting, and Brian Wilson barely remembers even making this album. So there's not a lot to distinguish it other than it's just not a very good album. Number 24, I'm going to go with 1985 self-titled The Beach Boys. And again, here we are with the whole 80s, drum machines, overuse of synthesizers. The harmony's okay. I mean, there are certain songs that, I appreciate. Get You Back is okay. It's not awful. It doesn't hurt my ears to listen to it, but, just knowing what the Beach Boys were capable of, it really is a disappointment. And we kind of hoped for more from them by this point. But considering all the struggles and, the trauma that the Beach Boys had gone through, who could blame them for kind of phoning this one in? Number 23, I'm going to go with 15 Big Ones. Never been a fan of this album. I know this is supposed to be Brian's comeback album, but it's just, to my ears, it sounds very limp and weak. Rock and roll music, I don't know. It just sounds like a lifeless shell of a song, particularly when you compare it against what the Beatles did with that particular song. Hadophonia is just, I don't know. It's trite. I don't care for it that much. I don't care for the cover songs, Palisades Park, Blueberry Hill. I don't like it. I own the album on CD. I very rarely listen to it. Fortunately, it's a double album CD. It has Love You also on the disc. Otherwise, I might never listen to the disc at all, but just not a fan. Sorry. Number 22, I'm going to go with the Beach Boys' debut album, Surfin' Safari. It's got Surfin' Safari. It's got surfing on it. It's just, there's a lot of filler. It was their first album, certainly not the strongest debut album in the history of rock and roll, nor is it the worst debut album, but just to me, there's too much filler, too many really insubstantial songs. The instrumentation is real basic and rudimentary. So it's interesting as a kind of a time capsule for the year 1962. But apart from that, it doesn't really do anything for me. And number 21, I'm going to go, because technically this is a studio album, the Beach Boys' Christmas album. I feel like the original Christmas songs that they do on side one are clever and enjoyable, and they really, put their heart and soul into the Christmas standards with the orchestration that are on side two. It's very enjoyable around the holidays. I listen to it every holiday season, once, twice, sometimes 3 times. I really enjoy it as a Christmas album, and I think it holds up really well even after all these years. Number 20. Surfin' USA, much for the same reason as Surfin' Safari. Same issues that I had with Surfin' Safari. Brian Wilson was still not he was still learning how to be a songwriter. There's too many kind of, trite, basic, silly, simple songs on there. And just, not a whole lot. It's chock full of filler. At that point, a lot of albums that you would listen to from popular artists or rock and roll bands, it was a couple of singles and then there was a whole lot of filler just to flesh out an entire album. And I think that's what you see with Surfin' Safari. Number 19, Carl and the Passions. I like You Need a Mess of Help. To stand alone, I think that's fine. Beyond that, I don't really care for it all that much. It's just kind of that early 70s period where for me a lot of it was hit or miss. And, they paired it with Pet Sounds, so it kind of suffered in comparison to that. It's not a terrible album, but it's just not one that I listen to a lot or that I prefer. Definitely my least favorite of the early 70s Beach Boys albums. 18, I'm going to go with Surfer Girl. We're starting to get a little better, a little more quality of songs contained on this album. So I do, their early Beach Boys albums, I think it's better than their first two, but we're almost there, but it's still not a 100% great album yet. But I can listen to it all the way through, and there are enjoyable moments, Surfer Girl being one of them. Number 17, That's Why God Made the Radio. What a great comeback album. It's so nice to have Brian back, and unfortunately Carl wasn't a part of the making of this album, but with the Beach Boys that remained, that are still living, I think they did a really great job. I think Brian, wrote some really solid songs. I think the production is great. The harmonies are still there, even at their advanced age. It's just a really enjoyable album. It's kind of like the Monkees' Good Times, where I don't think anybody expected a true quality Beach Boys album this late in the game, but that's what we got with That's Why God Made the Radio. I think it's a fun, really good album. If you haven't checked it out yet, I should really encourage you to. 16, Shutdown Volume 2. I love Fun, Fun, Fun. I love The Warmth of the Sun. Just a lot of really great tracks on there. One of the unsung Beach Boys songs that I really like on here is Keep an Eye on Summer. I just love Brian's falsetto and the harmonies on that. In My Room, or was that on, sometimes I get it confused. In My Room might have been on Surfer Girl. I think it was on Surfer Girl. So, but nonetheless, I still think that Shutdown Volume 2 is, a solid album. It was right in 1964 when the Beach Boys had stormed onto the American music scene, and the Beach Boys were, trying to keep up with them. I really like it as an album. It's, I think it holds together well. There is some filler on it, yes, but overall, it's a pretty decent early 60s Beach Boys album. Number 15, Little Deuce Coupe, which is more a compilation. There are songs that were on albums before, like Shutdown, 409. Little Deuce Coupe had been a single before, so they recycled some old songs, and then there are some new tracks. Custom Machine is really great. I like Our Car Club. It's just got kind of like that early 60s innocent charm about it. So Little Deuce Coupe I like a lot. 14, Beach Boys Party. And it's really one of the first unplugged albums before there was such a thing as unplugged. The Beach Boys do some interesting cover. They cover a couple of Beatles songs. I like the Everly Brothers cover, Devoted to You, I think is really sweet. Barbara Ann, obviously the single is on there, and that's a fun cover. I could have done without all the party noises mixed in. I think that's kind of distracting, and it would be a lot better without that. I don't need the simulation, I don't need to be in the headspace if there's a party going on. I would just love to hear the Beach Boys having fun with some acoustic instruments. Number 13, and some of you might be surprised why this is ranked so high, LA Light album. And this is another one of those, in spite of what you've heard, this album is not as terrible as some critics or other Beach Boys fans have made it out to be. There's a lot to really enjoy. Carl and Dennis absolutely shine on this album. I love just Carl's voice. I love Dennis's compositions on this album. Lady Linda, I'm not a fan of. That might be the one track that probably I'm the coldest about on that particular album. I think overall it's a solid Beach Boys album that has gotten an unfair shake over all those years because because it really is. It's an enjoyable album if you give it a chance, and if you aren't expecting it to be another Pet Sounds or something other than what it is. It's really, there's not much Brian Wilson on it. There's not much Mike Love on it, which actually isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I like that album a lot. I don't like it enough to put it in my top 10, but, you know, certainly I think ranking at 13 is higher than most people would. Number 12, my pick is Beach Boys' Love You. And I know that might be blasphemy because some people think that is the second best album to Pet Sounds. It's an amazing album. It's Brian, one of his best albums ever. I've never been all that much in love with Love You, to be honest with you. I think it's interesting. You know, Brian was a little ahead of the game, doing an album almost entirely on keyboards and synthesizers. It's cool in that regard, but the lyrics are just a little too pedestrian, a little too cute, a little too naive, a little too bizarre for me. God, please let us go on this way is okay. You know, Johnny Carson is all right, the melody of it. But, you know, as a whole, it's a curiosity for me more than anything else. I mean, I enjoy that Brian threw himself into it, and he really, you know, for the first time since the late 60s, Brian actually was interested in making, you know, and producing an entire album. So, you know, I rank it high for that reason alone, just because, you know, it's probably Brian's, you know, closest to Brian's heart of all the 70s album that the Beach Boys made. But for me, you know, I don't like it as much as some other people. Don't sue me. Number 11, I'm going to go with the Holland album. I think I had this album ranked a little higher when I did my top 10 Beach Boys album a few months ago. But, you know, I like Sail on Sailor. I like Funky Pretty a lot. I like the California Saga. The Traitor, obviously, is excellent. So I really like that album a lot. And it comes with a bonus EP if you're lucky enough to purchase it back in the day. Good luck finding that in any vinyl copy that you stumble across in the wild anymore. Number 10, I'm going to go with 2020. This was kind of a catch-all for the stuff that the Beach Boys had lingering around in the late 60s. You know, I do like late 60s Beach Boys. I think there's a lot of very cool stuff on this album. I like Do It Again. I like Bluebirds Over the Mountain. I love I Can Hear Music. I love I Went to Sleep. Time to Get Alone is a great track. So there's a lot of gems on this album, and I think it hangs together really well, even though it was kind of a patchwork album. But it's a fun album, and I like Friends a lot, and so, you know, I like 2020 a lot as well. Number 9, I'm going to go with the Surf's Up album. This has got probably some of the Beach Boys' most political statements on here, but some of my favorites. I love Feel Flows. That reminds me almost like a Buffalo Springfield song in some ways. I just love the guitar break on it. I just love everything about it. I think Till I Die is a classic Brian Wilson track. I think Surf's Up is a great song. Disney Girls is a classic Bruce Johnson track. So a lot to recommend on that album. The cover art is amazing. It's like no other Beach Boys cover art that you've ever seen. But I love it to death. Number 8, All Summer Long, the quintessential summer album. Always one of the first albums that I play when summer is upon us, just to get me in the whole mood of summer. I mean, so many great tracks all summer long. You've got I Get Around, which is great. Little Honda, so many, you know, Wendy, so many fabulous tracks on that album. I love the album artwork with all the different all the different like summer scenes on it is just so cool. So All Summer Long without reservation is my number 8 pick. Number 7, I'm going to go with the Wild Honey album. I did an episode just devoted to Wild Honey, so I'm not going to spend too much time on why I love that album, but it's just a great lo-fi album, and it's the Beach Boys just kind of, you know, relaxing after all the pressures that came with Pet Sounds and Smiley Smile and the the Smile Project, and just, they sound like they're having fun with it. They're doing what they want to do. They don't care what people think of it. I mean, they do because they want to sell records, but just in terms of, the style of music and the material that they're covering, it's really a Beach Boys soul album. It's a lo-fi soul album, I guess is the best way to describe Wild Honey, but I love it to death. Number 6 is going to be Smiley Smile. And I don't think I put Smiley Smile on my top 10 list. I must have been in a bad mood or something when I was doing that. It's a very weird Beach Boys album, but there's something very endearing about it. And it would rank in the top 10 just by virtue of the fact you have 2 excellent singles on it. You got Heroes and Villains, and you got Good Vibrations. And in between, you've got some gems. With Me Tonight, I think is fantastic. I love Little Pad. I think there's a charm about that. Even Whistle In, I think is a charming way to end the album. Vegetables, I think is a really fun track. She's Going Bald is one of the most bizarre Beach Boys tracks that they ever recorded. It's just get in the right headspace, and Smiley Smile is a fun album to listen to if you take it on its own terms and, don't expect it to be, as great as Smile would have been. It's still a fun mid-late 60s Beach Boys album. Number 5, I'm going to go with Sunflower, their first album of the 70s. Just a whole lot of gems on this one. This Whole World is a tremendous Brian track. Cool Cool Water was left over from the Smile sessions. Just a lot of really great tracks. There's some good Dennis tracks on here. Forever, obviously, is one of the greatest, most moving songs that Dennis ever wrote. Again, if you're a Beach Boys fan and you're watching this, I don't need to sell you on Sunflower. You know all the reasons why it's great, and it's my number 5. Number 4, I'm going to go with Summer Days and Summer Nights. Just such a, it's one step closer to Pet Sounds. It really is, even though Beach Boys Party was the album that was released before Pet Sounds. Really, Brian was setting the stage for Pet Sounds with Summer Days and Summer Nights. Just the excellent tracks that are on there. Let 'Em Run Wild, You're So Good to Me, California Girls, Help Me Rhonda, the re-recorded version with the H in the Rhonda. Salt Lake City is a great track with the Wrecking Crew. I even like stuff like Amusement Parks USA is a fun little track. Girl Don't Tell Me, I think a track that the Beach Boys wrote with the Beatles in mind. So it's just a solid album, and I really, it's one of my favorites. Number 3, the album right before Summer Days, Summer Nights, the Today album. Side 2, just perfection. I love Please Let Me Wonder, I'm So Young, Kiss Me Baby is great. She Knows Me Too Well is fantastic, In the Back of My Mind. And then on side 1, When I Grow Up to Be a Man is great. Help Me Rhonda without the H. Do You Want to Dance is a fun little Dennis vocal. So just a great album. I love the album cover. Just perfection from the Beach Boys. Number 2 and number 1. Really, my number 1 is always going to be my number 1. I don't care what mood I'm in. I don't care, what state of mind I'm in. So I really didn't have much trouble picking between number 1 and number 2. Number 2 is going to be Friends. I did an episode also devoted to this. So if you're interested, I go in depth into all the reasons why I love this album, but just so many great tracks on here. It's just a very laid back, not quite as lo-fi as Wild Honey, but they were definitely going against the grain of what other music was on the radio and what was popular back then in 1968. But Friends is a great track. I love Brian's song Busy Doing Nothing, the bossa nova charm of that. Diamond Head is a great instrumental. Dennis has some great tracks with Little Bird and Be Still. Just a nice, feel-good, kind of a chill-out album to listen to. And this Friends and my number one are the two Beach Boys albums that I listen to more than any other. So no surprise, number one, of course, is Pet Sounds. What can be said? Not only is it the Beach Boys' greatest album, but it might be one of the greatest. I don't think there's any, it might be. Of course, it's one of the greatest albums of all time. Wouldn't It Be Nice? God Only Knows. Caroline, No. You Still Believe in Me. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times. I Know There's an Answer. I mean, so many great tracks on here. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous album. And, I think it will always stand as Brian's greatest achievement. So that is my top 28 list. And let me know in your comments, what do you think? What are your favorite top 10 Beach Boys albums? Have I alienated any Beach Boys fans? I'm sure I have, because somebody's going to be like, you ranked my favorite album too low, or, I can't believe you ranked this so high. But that's the fun of it all. Everybody's, your list is just as valid as mine. This just happens to be my personal list. So anyway, thank you for watching, and hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope you're enjoying the rest of your 2020, and everybody take care.